being here, Shannon. We appreciate that.
Yes.
And like we said, we hope we will see you soon at our meal site.
Me too. I'm hoping to meet so many people in
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
I love meeting people in person after COVID. It's such a, I say, a cheap thrill because we were just so used to that before, seeing everyone in person. Now it's over Zoom. So here, I will go ahead and share my screen here.
So the cannabis industry is increasing by 14% and projected to.
All right, can everyone see that?
7 years, alcoholic beverages.
I can see it.
Okay, great. Okay, so progress on here. So with our agenda today, like Paul said, we're going to be discussing our senses, and I like to focus on taste and smell. These change as we age, but then I'll also be covering additional reasons why our taste and smell might change in addition to aging, and why it's important to bring awareness to this change, and then also some common strategies for adapting and enjoying your food if you're experiencing changes to your taste and smell. Now, for people to maintain good nutrition, our food must be appealing to our sense of taste and smell. We know that, right? If something smells good, we want to eat it. However, with increasing age, decline in these senses can affect the pleasure and satisfaction that we might obtain from our food. So let's start by discussing taste. So think of appreciating like the saltiness of a pretzel or the sweetness of ice cream. To do that, we need to thank our taste buds. Our taste buds are the sensory organs that are found on your tongue, and they allow you to experience tastes that are sweet, salty, sour, and bitter. If you stick out your tongue in the mirror later, you'll see all sorts of bumps on your tongue. And if we are keeping it simple, we could say these are our taste buds. But if we were to dive into the topic a little bit deeper, which I will, of course, we call these little bumps on our tongue called papillae. And each of these papillae contain around 250 taste buds within that little bump. There's also a little hair in there, this microscopic sensitive hair called microvilli. And these tiny hairs actually are what send the messages to our brain about how something tastes. So now, speaking of sweet, salty, sour, and bitter, everyone has probably seen this tongue map at some point in their life. So this little diagram of the tongue has different sections neatly cordoned off for different taste receptors. Sweet is in the front, salty and sour on the sides, and bitter at the back. It's probably the most recognizable symbol in the study of taste. But an interesting fact is that it's wrong. Our taste buds are not neatly sectioned off like that. And this was actually debunked by scientists over 100 years ago. But I can tell you, I learned about this in school, and I'm not over 100. So this tongue map is floating around and still being taught this way, that our taste buds are sectioned off in different parts of our tongue. But in fact, we have sweet, salty, bitter, sour taste buds all over our tongue and mixed up. So this map is actually wrong. Here we go. All right, so we're going to look at some of the numbers. Now, the average human is born with about 9,000 taste buds. And think of a newborn baby and how small their tongue is. I mean, that is just incredible that they have around 9,000 taste buds. And in our prime as an adult, we'll have between 10,000 to 15,000 taste buds. And our taste buds are regenerated and replaced about every 2 weeks or so. It varies, but 2 weeks is the norm. But as we age, many of those taste buds don't get replaced. This is just one of the many reasons why the ability to taste food well declines as we age. And in fact, taste changes may occur starting as early as age 50. So as we age, remember the number of taste buds will be decreasing, and the taste buds that are remaining on our tongue are beginning to shrink in size. So we have a few less, and their size gets smaller. So not only do we have less taste buds, but the ones that are remaining aren't working as good as they used to, and that starts at age 50. Once we hit age 60, our ability to determine the difference between the different tastes, sweet, salty, sour, and bitter, begin to diminish. but they don't all decline at the same rate. Interestingly enough, the saltiness is the taste that starts to decline first. So if you find yourself grabbing the salt shaker and you never did in the past, if you weren't one that needed to salt your food before you ate it, but you see yourself doing that, it's often because the ability to taste salt declines first. Now, by age 70, you've lost about 2 out of 3 taste buds. And another interesting fact is that women retain their sense of taste better than men do. I thought that was interesting too. Now, not only can age decrease our sense of taste, but certain medications, lifestyle habits, and chronic medical conditions can as well. So these other ways that taste can be affected actually play a larger role than age does. I always like to point that out. You know, I was just talking about what happens starting at age 50 to our taste buds, but lifestyle habits, medications, and medical conditions can actually play a larger role and have a bigger impact on our loss of taste and smell. So now the medications, habits, and health conditions that have a much bigger impact, in no particular order: smoking, poor oral hygiene, dentures that rub on the tongue can actually rub the taste buds, the papillae, right off. Parkinson's or Alzheimer's disease. People with diabetes are less able to detect certain flavors, and cancer treatments change or intensify certain taste perceptions. Oftentimes, someone undergoing treatment may think that all their food has a metallic taste, and some think that flavors are too strong when they're going through cancer treatment. There's also some medications that decrease our ability to taste, and others actually accentuate it. One other thing that can happen is when we have a change with the amount of saliva in our mouth. Saliva is necessary for taste, and this just naturally decreases later in life. So a dry mouth is really common if you're not drinking enough water or you're just not producing enough saliva. And this is something that naturally happens as we age, and that can make it more difficult to taste. All right. So I want to move on to focusing a little bit on smell. And we know that, you know, the sense of smell is directly related to taste. 2/3 of our taste sensations depend on our ability to smell. Have you ever noticed how your stomach growls when, you know, you smell your favorite food wafting in from the kitchen, even though your room's away and you haven't even tasted a bite, but you can just smell it, and all of a sudden you're hungry. You know, you can't wait to eat it. That's your smell senses kicking in, because both the sense of taste and the sense of smell use the same type of receptors in your body and are stimulated at the same time. So one thing that's really interesting, I wanted to put this in there. If you can't smell green peppers before you eat them, they'll taste bitter. And one of the most common pieces of feedback that I get when I'm working with the senior nutrition meal program is that most of my seniors do not enjoy green peppers in their food. And I found that so interesting when I came across this in the research, that if you are unable to smell that pepper before you eat it, whether it's in its raw state or cooked, it will taste bitter to you when you don't smell it. So that is one of the most common complaints I get about vegetables, is just leave the green peppers out. So I found that really interesting. Now, many of us take our senses for granted. You know, we're just always able to smell. But the average person after birth can smell around 10,000 different smells. Now, we know that our sense of smell is extremely important, and we don't realize how important it is until we start to experience changes. Okay. All right, so why is our sense of smell important? You know, we know the obvious reasons. You know, it makes life enjoyable when you're able to smell things, most things. But first reason there, you know, really smell interacts with taste to help you enjoy the flavor of food. Like I said earlier, your taste and smell receptors work together. So when you're biting into a slightly soft, ripe strawberry, you can taste it and smell it at the same time, and this helps enhance the enjoyment of eating. And while you're chewing, the food releases chemicals that immediately travel up into your nose. And these chemicals trigger receptors inside the nose, and they work together with your taste buds to create that true flavor of that slightly, perfectly ripe sweet strawberry. Now, odors also evoke our emotions. And this is because our sense of smell is closely tied to the part of our brain most involved with memory and function. However, our reaction to an odor largely depends on our experiences with it and what we remember. So, we can taste foods and we can smell them, and that can help us enjoy it. But also what factors into that is your memories related to that food. Oh, did your mom make you eat oatmeal every morning growing up, and it's just something you can't stand, even though that might normally taste good in your mouth? The memories will actually factor in there and make you not enjoy it as much. So I found that interesting as well. Smells can stimulate your appetite, make you hungry. Like I said, if you smell something from across the house, you haven't tasted it, and all of a sudden your stomach growls. Well, that actually happens because it can stimulate your appetite just by smelling something. So, think of smelling coffee in the morning. That can make you look forward to having your first sip. Or for me, it's, when the neighbors start grilling meats on their grill, it's like I can smell it and I'm instantly hungry, or thinking, why didn't I think of grilling? So it's really interesting how that works. Just smelling something, it can really, really bring up your appetite. On the other side, smelling something can also make you lose your appetite too. Things that I was thinking of is if you are hard boiling eggs, it can kind of give you that sulfur smell in your house. And if someone were to walk in, you'd be like, ooh, I really did boil eggs. It wasn't me. So that can make someone lose their appetite. And I think of like seafood. For some people, when seafood is cooking, it can smell really fishy and unappealing. And for some people, that can make their appetite be lost too. Now, also something that many people don't think about is food safety. When you're not able to smell foods, you lose part of keeping yourself safe when it comes to foods expiring. How many times have you opened a container and smelled something to see if it still smelled good, it's okay to eat? I've done that so many times, opening up a package of lunch meat or smelling some leftovers. Does it still have a good smell? And then proceeding forward that way. And also things that are not related to food, but smelling toxic gases and chemicals. So, any type of gas leak or the smell of smoke if there's a fire, if you're not able to smell, you don't have that first alert built in. So think of, if you were at the gas station pumping gas and you spilled gas on your clothes and on your hands, if you weren't able to smell that and you didn't go into the gas station right away to wash your hands, by the time you get home, you probably forgot all about it. I mean, I would if I couldn't smell that strong smell. So it's interesting how, when we lose our sense of smell or it's diminished, what other dangers can present themselves to us. All right, so let's take a look at the numbers when it comes to our sense of smell. Now, smell tests show that about 1 out of 8 people have some smell loss. And about 1 out of 15 people report smelling phantom odors that aren't really there, or smelling something that normally smells pleasant, they think it smells foul. About 1 out of 30 people have very little or no sense of smell at all. So I'm glad that that's a very small number. Now, when it comes to age, this is how the numbers fall. In our 40s, a very small amount, just 4% of people are more likely to have smell loss. In your 50s, about 11%. And in your 60s, that number is about 13%. But this next stage is where it gets really interesting, and the percentages almost double. So in your 70s, you have 25% of individuals have smelling loss, and at age 80 and up, the changes are around 39% of people experience smell loss. So like I said earlier, I wanted to cover, why the information about why our senses, taste and smell change with age, but there's also so many other reasons why our senses change too. So smoking is one thing that can really affect our sense of smell. I mean, how many people have been around others that, oh, they've quit smoking and now they can smell things. And they're so happy about that. And it's because when you smoke, the tobacco, it irritates the mucous membranes of the nose. And when smoking goes away, those mucous membranes can repair themselves and you can start to smell again. Other behaviors and lifestyle habits, long-term alcoholism, dental problems, nasal problems, including allergies, hay fever, head colds, viral or sinus infections, and flu, nasal polyps in the nose or sinuses that give you a constant runny nose, hormonal disturbances, excessive exposure to insecticides and solvents. I think of, someone treating lawns all day long for their job. That can definitely affect their mucous membranes in their nose. Coronavirus, COVID-19 can make you lose your smell, but it returns after your symptoms resolve. A traumatic head injury or stroke can impact your sense of smell, because if you have an injury to your neck or head, it can damage the nerves related to your sense of smell. There's also health conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, because there's tangles and plaques in the brain that can cause a change with your smell. Malnutrition, obesity, poorly controlled diabetes, hypothyroidism, and multiple sclerosis. And for most of these health conditions, it's when they're uncontrolled and not managed well. Interestingly enough, there's medications. Some antibiotics and blood pressure medications can impact smell. And cancer treatment, like I mentioned before, can have an effect on your taste. It can also affect your sense of smell, but as soon as treatment is done, most everyone's ability to smell comes back after that treatment's done. And like I said, with women and their taste buds, research also shows that women at all ages are generally more accurate than men in identifying odors. So found that interesting too. Now, if you are concerned about your smell, you're definitely not alone. I looked at some of the numbers over the past year. Over 200,000 people visit a physician each year for help with smell changes, smell disorders. So if you have an appointment regarding your sense of smell, your doctor's going to walk through and try and determine the cause, what's causing your problems with your sense of smell. They're going to walk through that list that I just showed on the previous slide. Or do you have lifestyle behaviors that are causing this, or certain medications? And they'll just walk through and figure out how they can make an improvement. But they have developed tests to determine the extent and nature of a person's smell disorder. And these tests are designed to measure the smallest amount of odor patients can detect, as well as their accuracy in identifying the different smells. So these tests are actually modeled after scratch and sniff stickers that were invented in 1965. So when you go in for a smell test, they have a strip of smells that you peel back a paper and you scratch it and you sniff. And then they give you options on what that particular section smells like. And they can make determinations from those tests on how severe your smell change is. So I found that very interesting. And I don't know about you, but when I had scratch and sniff stickers when I was a kid, sometimes when it was just a sweet fruit, I could just detect that it was sweet, but it might be hard to determine, okay, is this a strawberry, or is it a raspberry, or is it, grape? So some of those things are a little bit tricky, but they do give you, it's like a multiple choice to choose from. So it's not overwhelming. And certainly loss of smell can be treated. Like I said, your doctor will go through and say, okay, is this medication possibly the cause? Let's adjust the dosage or change the medication. Or can we quit smoking? Or do we need to get your health condition under control and better managed and see some improvements that way? Research has also shown that there's allergy medication that can enhance your smell. And so they're actually doing some testing right now, which I find interesting, to figure out what is in that allergy medication that we could use to help people smell better that have problems.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. on your business about the accuracy of the sense of smell.
Yes.
I was I was made into a judge of a science high school science fair project
Yes.
thing in Milwaukee and one of the most interesting projects was somebody had put together, they had colored solutions and they were yellow, green, red, and purple, and they were flavored as lemon, grape, raspberry, and lime. And if the color matched, like if the green was lime, the accuracy in detecting it was very high. And if the yellow was lemon, the accuracy was very high. But when they mixed them up, so the green one was actually grape, or the the yellow one was actually raspberry or something, then people's accuracy in detecting what it was went way down. If the color didn't.
That is so interesting because I mean, I myself, I like to look at my food before I eat it. Like I have kids, so they'll be like, hey mom, try this. And I have to pull the fork back and look at it before I eat it. But that makes sense if you think, oh yeah, the lime is green, but then if the lime was purple, that's really hard. That's so interesting and so true. It does make it harder. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see here. Let me move on. I think I finished everything right there. Okay. There we go. So, we covered what happens at the doctor's if you have some issues with your smell. But what can you do at home? If, you're working with your doctor and you're not seeing any improvements, what can you do yourself? And I would say, the first thing is if you live with someone else or you're regularly dining with someone else, just bring attention to the issue that you're having. Let your significant other or friends or family know that you're experiencing this so that they can help you. So I would say, one of the best things to do is realize that there's ways to stimulate your appetite, because appetite is one of the first things to go when you don't have your sense of smell and taste. And when I say don't have, just diminished smell and taste. So you can taste somewhat, but how many times have you had a cold and you haven't been able to taste something and you think to yourself, well, it doesn't really pay to eat, I can't taste it anyways. Well, what if later on in life you're experiencing these changes? You can't say that every day. But oftentimes our appetite will decrease when you can't taste and smell foods as good. And that makes sense. So one of the best things to do is, if you can, eat with other people, because believe it or not, conversation stimulates appetite. So right now you might not be dining with a whole bunch of people, but even calling a friend and dining together over the phone, or you're all great at Zoom, dining over Zoom. People have, different happy hours and dinners together and really make it fun. And just having that conversation and eating with someone else can make it more enjoyable, even if you can't taste and smell as good. The other thing too is that when you don't have an appetite because of your sense of smell and taste is diminished, someone that's aware of what you're going through can give you those little helpful nudges to eat, when they're eating too. I'd also, oh yes. Did you have a question? I think you're on mute still.
Lorna, is it Lorna?
Yeah,
go ahead.
But there's a fifth sense of fifth taste, right? And the other thing is, it's interesting that babies will eat anything, but as they get older, they don't. So, baby coming from an area that has very hot peppers or something can eat hot peppers, and maybe someone who's Scandinavian can't.
Mm-hmm.
Want to comment about those?
I actually received that question in a previous presentation, and I tried looking into it further. And, really the only thing that I came across is that it's a taste that you are used to since birth, or since young age. And so that's where the memory and the memory comes in. You know, you associate that flavor as you like it, you enjoy it. Each of us have different amounts of sweet, salty, bitter taste buds on our tongue, and that's genetic. So I think that has something to do with it too. I can tell you, having 2 kids that came from the same parents, my son will put hot sauce on everything, but my daughter, there's no way that she can, you know, she just can't even tolerate it and doesn't like it. So it's just really interesting. I don't know why that is.
Mm-hmm. But as to the 5th taste, like MSG,
Mm-hmm.
called,
Yes.
it
What
has
the formal name for it is, I have to look at that here.
it's
Is it
UM
umami?
something.
Yes, unami. Thank
Umami.
you. Yep.
Yep.
So that is also one of our 5th taste buds. And there's still not a lot of, when I was going through the information, there's still not a lot of background information on it, but it is to detect those high salt flavors. So I don't usually throw that one in there because it throws a lot of people for a loop, because many of us have not heard of that 5th sense of taste. But thank you for bringing that up. It is interesting that there is a 5th one that's added in there. Let's see here. Now, the other thing that I do want to mention, oftentimes when, you know, our appetite is lower because we're not smelling and tasting as good, one of the most common things that we see in seniors is that they get dehydrated, because you're not only, you know, not eating as much, but then you might not be drinking as much. So remember that dry mouth. If you don't have as much saliva in there, it's going to be harder to taste foods and smell them too. So just like to point that out. The other thing, you know, when you're thinking of just what you can do at home, making sure that you're setting reminders to eat, and also figuring out a way to remind yourself to drink as well. So I have a lot of people that they'll fill up a pitcher of water for the day and set it on their kitchen counter. And then you can see how much water you're drinking throughout the day. That's a really good visual. For others, you might have seen like the big water bottles, and instead of ounces on the side, it'll have the time of day, like drink so much water by 8 a.m., noon, 4 p.m. So that's a good visual too. Or just getting into the habit of, okay, at every meal I have 10 to 12 ounces of water, and then a glass at bedtime, or, when you go and exercise, getting into those routines of regularly having water. Let's see here. I think we covered everything on that slide. The other thing, we're talking about sense of taste and smell, but we definitely eat with our eyes. If something really looks good and it's appealing, when foods have a variation of color, shape, texture, temperature, it's just, we want to eat it. It's something different. It looks good. How often do you want to eat a plate of food that's all beige? Mashed potatoes, it sounds good. Mashed potatoes, gravy, turkey. I'm thinking of a bread roll, everything that's white on the plate. We really, when we design our menus with the senior nutrition program, we always try and keep colors and textures into account, because we do eat with our eyes. So if food looks good and appealing, we're more likely to eat it. So think about that when you're preparing your food at home too. The other thing is that I found this very interesting. When foods are warm, they have a stronger smell typically. Not all foods, but we find that warm foods versus cold can, the aroma of the food is enhanced and it will stimulate our appetite better. So if you have a small appetite, focusing on hot foods, warm foods versus cold, like cold salads, can make a difference. Also, putting texture into food sometimes helps substitute for taste and smell. For example, instead of serving like a blended applesauce, buying the chunky style of applesauce at the store or making it yourself. Also, blended foods are the most difficult to taste. So instead of having a cream of potato soup, having a potato soup that has chunks of potato in it can make a difference. Just when foods are pureed and blended, it's really hard to pick out the flavors that are in there. We also want to try to use smell enhancing strategies. You know, we want to let the aroma of pleasant foods permeate the environment. So think of all the foods that you love to smell while they're cooking. And smelling these odors can almost make it unbearable to wait for the meal to be finished in order to eat. We want to make sure that we're seasoning our food with flavor extracts, herbs, marinades, spices, like my son, hot sauce, you know, whatever you need to do to make that food taste good, you know, make it appealing to you. The other strategy is, you know, when a food is done cooking, you can plate the food and cover it with another plate. You know, picture like a hospital tray. They do that because they want to ensure the temperature is good by the time you eat that food. But if you're doing it at home, you know, plate the food, take another plate and place it over the top and put it on your dinner table. And then let it sit there for a moment or two. And when you lift that plate, all those trapped scents will travel up to your nose and be very strong. Don't burn yourself from the steam. But, you know, that is a good strategy of just having that plate covered. When you're ready to eat, uncover it. And those smells will be really strong and stimulate the appetite. And you'll be able to smell that food that's right in front of you. So just something to think about too. The other thing, and I always say this to my kids, slow down and eat. You know, they just want to eat and get up from the table and go. But that's also true at a later age. We want to slow down and chew your food, because the more time that food is on your tongue, on those taste buds, the better chances you have to taste that food. So just really slowing down and making sure that you're not gobbling down your food too fast. You know, let it have a chance to sit on your tongue and you'll be able to taste it better. Other strategies that you can try, work on alternate bites of food. I found this very interesting as well. So switching from food to food maximizes the amount of taste and flavor. So if you have, for example, like mashed potatoes, I'll take that same meal, mashed potatoes, turkey, and corn on your plate. If you sit there and just eat mashed potatoes after mashed potato, that first bite has the most flavor, and then the flavor kind of diminishes from there if you're eating the same food. But if you take a bite of mashed potatoes and then a bite of turkey and then a bite of corn, and, you know, no particular order, but if you vary the bites like that, the flavor intensity is stronger. So I found that interesting as well. The other thing I would say too is if you yourself or anyone, a loved one or family member that you're taking care of, ever needs to have, you know, their foods pureed or texture modified, you want to make sure to still keep the different foods separate. So I'll refer to that same meal again, turkey, mashed potatoes, and corn. You would never want to puree or have that all chopped up really small and then mixed together. You would never want to do that. You'd want to keep it separate because when food is mixed together, it's very difficult to differentiate those flavors. So we just want to keep those foods separate, even if the texture has to be modified. And that's why with some of our senior meals, we do have certain caterers that can offer pureed or mechanically soft eating plans. And we always keep the food separate in the tray to be more appealing and to be able to taste that better. Okay. This up here. Whoops, going through my slides here. All right. So just a few more strategies continued. Like we said, when you do the smell test and you're opening up containers or opening up a package of lunch meat and you're smelling it to see, is this safe to eat? You definitely just start to label your food. If you're not able to smell it for those reasons, to check and see if it's good or not, definitely label your food when you're putting it in the fridge and have set dates of when you're going to throw those foods out if you haven't eaten it. We say to cook or freeze chicken, turkey, fish, or ground meats within 2 days, and beef or pork should be cooked within 3 to 5 days. And that's all from the Wisconsin Food Code. All leftovers, I think this is the most important part, all leftovers should be eaten within 3 to 5 days. Sometimes I stretch that, and that's where I have to smell it. But if you're not able to smell, have a guideline where you know, okay, after day 5, this gets tossed. And so you should make sure and date your food if you're not able to smell it as well. The other thing too is I have here, write notes as reminders, set timers. If you are cooking and using a gas stove, gas oven, making sure that you're writing a note or setting a timer that after that meal is out of the oven, that you're then turning off that stove so that it's, your gas stove isn't running all night long. So just setting a reminder for yourself, turn on the oven, make sure and turn it off, just so that you're double checking. So just some safety measures there. All right, so, really, I want you to think about right now, when you think of your smells and tastes, what would you miss smelling? And what flavors would you miss tasting? So I just want you to take a moment right now. If you have a pen and paper by you, write down your top 3 smells. If you don't have paper, just think of it in your mind. But what are your top 3 smells? And it doesn't have to just be food, too. So top 3 smells, then also think of your top 3 tastes as well. So take a moment right now and think about that. And hopefully those came to you pretty quickly, but I found this really interesting. There were over 2,000 people that were surveyed, and they came up with the 30 most popular smells that people liked. And to keep it interesting, I also looked into the top 12 smells that people disliked. I didn't have you think of that, but I'm sure we'll all be on the same page when I share those. So here are the top 30 smells. Like I said, it's not all related to food. Freshly cut grass, coffee, bacon, cologne or perfume, clean laundry, baked goods, fresh air and the smell after it rains, fried foods, the ocean, vanilla, a real Christmas tree, the barbecue grill, that's mine, baby powder or babies, chocolate, clean scent, new car smell, coconut, pizza, oranges and citrus, seawater, bonfire and burning wood, morning dew on the grass, home smell, our own home smell is very comforting, Sharpie markers, books, Thanksgiving dinner, roasted or sauteed onions and garlic, popcorn, mint, and flowers. So I found that to be very interesting.
What did you find interesting about it? Did you differ from it?
I didn't differ from it, but I thought there's actually a top list of 100 smells as well, and I wasn't going to go through all of that, but definitely a lot of these wouldn't be my favorite smells, like fried food, and Sharpie markers. I don't know if I, but it's just real. I just found it so interesting that, okay, a lot of mine are on this list. So, and also the next one, smells that we could do without. So body odor, sweat, sewage, garbage cans, mold, mildew, sauerkraut. I actually love that smell. Gasoline, skunk, stale cigarettes, blue cheese, public bathrooms, spoiled milk, and stinky drains. So.
Well, just labeling it stinky, it kind of gives it prejudices your view of it, right?
Right, exactly. Laughed at that one.
I wonder if anybody has done anything on bacon, for example. A lot of people are very attracted to the smell of cooking bacon, but I wonder if anybody's seen if there's any difference by religion. I wonder if Jews and Muslims are less attracted to cooking bacon than, say,
Right.
Protestants or atheists or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very interesting. So that would definitely, be something that's not on your list. So, but might be on others.
Somebody should do some research on that.
Yes, I love the research. It's so interesting. And then when it came to tastes, I searched and searched. What are the most popular tastes? So I really
Angus.
the popular taste, but I did want to share the top 10 acquired tastes, which is just interesting. And an acquired taste is, when you can look past the negative qualities of that food to gain the positive benefits. So oftentimes it has to do with texture or the smell of these foods, why people might not like them, but there's benefits to eating some of them. So found that really interesting. Blue cheese, Vegemite, Haggis, lutefisk, olives, anchovies, kimchi, alcohol, coffee, and raw oysters. So do any of you in the group like any foods on the 10 acquired taste list?
Like them or dislike them?
Like them.
Most of them, but maybe not haggis or lutefisk, but everything.
Oh,
Anchovies, of course.
okay. I like olives and I like anchovies.
Coffee.
I'm a big.
Oh yeah, coffee
raw
every
oysters.
once in a while.
Blue cheese.
Most
Most
I
of
don't
these
know
I
what
like.
Vegemite taste smells like, but I like lutefisk, and I seem to be in the minority.
That is certainly an acquired taste. But that's great. Yeah, there's quite a few of them.
Yeah, I didn't acquire it. I've always liked it, that I know of.
That's interesting.
I came to Madison for the first time as a graduate student, and I guess I was 22 or something, and I did not like beer. I'd never tasted it much. You know, it was, I think it must have had an 18 drinking age when I grew up, and I just never adapted to it. I tasted it a few times. I didn't like it. When I got to Wisconsin and I discovered that everybody was drinking beer, I developed a taste for it, and now I like it in different beers. And now I know porters and stouts and ales and so on.
You've come a long way.
Definitely an acquired taste, but I acquired it as an adult, really.
And that's so interesting to me, because of course, as a child, you're not drinking beer, but even when you were coming to Madison, you didn't like it, but you just tried it over and over, and
it was what everybody else was doing.
Right. So interesting.
What's the difference between the smell of an ocean and seawater?
I don't know, but it was just on that top 30 list. I had to include it. It was research.
The ocean, I smell, I think, iodine long before I get there.
Interesting.
Spray.
Smells.
Yeah, you can smell the spray of an ocean if it's got waves and things when you're quite a ways away from it, if the wind is blowing in off the sea. And I think what you're smelling is actually the little droplets of salt water, ocean water.
One of my favorite smells is the ocean.
What?
The ocean.
The ocean.
Any favorite smells that weren't on this list that anyone would like to share?
Well, that list is so long, I can't.
Yeah.
Covers almost everything.
I know, that's why I'm like, oh, if there's anything that you had as a favorite smell that wasn't on there, I find that interesting. But
I really like the smell of pot roast in the kitchen because I like, especially if you're making it in the oven, like in a Dutch oven.
oh yes.
Slowly releases. And my mom used to make brisket, and I could smell it through a fairly thick door when I came home.
I learned something interesting when I was in college, and this was back in the 1950s or so, that there was an air freshener that was popular. And it's like if your house is smelly, you can make the air fresh. And people analyzing it to find how does this work? And basically the way it worked is that there was something in it that deadens your sense of smell. So if you put this air freshener in your house, then your house doesn't smell like anything anymore. And it's not because the odors are not there, it's that your nose is now deadened to them.
Oh, wow.
So you're fresh.
I don't
That's
know.
crazy.
That irritates me to have the air freshener stuff. But I also like raw onions and garlic smell.
Me too. Yeah, that one's not on here, just the roasted or sauteed. Yeah, that is a good scent and taste too. Yeah.
And I was wondering if anybody saw this. There was a YouTube circulating a while back. I'm in a group of people that passes jokes and interesting things back and forth. And there was a YouTube based upon this business of the COVID-19 deadens your sense of taste. And if it's hard to get a medical testing of whether or not you have the disease, she developed a home test for detecting COVID based upon your ability to taste wine. So she tastes wine, and then thinks, okay, and they have to do a retest to be sure we got it right. And after testing and retesting wine, it was a little comedy routine based upon using your ability to taste wine as your sense of whether or not you've contracted this COVID disease. Anybody else see that one?
We haven't seen. Yeah,
That's funny.
That would work, and everybody would wind up drunk.
Exactly. Good.
I should have circulated that little YouTube clip to everybody in the group here, I guess.
Yeah. So, well, that is all that I have, everyone. I hope you found it really interesting. I think it's incredibly interesting to learn what happens to our sense of taste and smell as we age, but then also the other lifestyle factors and habits and behaviors that factor in as well. So hopefully some of it was new or you just had fun listening. So I appreciate your time.
Hi, I'd like to share something. I could never stand the smell in a auto parts store until I figured out when I was 5 and had my tonsils out. I don't think it was the smell of ether. I think it was the rubber that they put over my face. It took me years to get over that. So, the association maybe when you're young.
Yeah.
I associate the new car smell with toxicity, and I can't, I have bought a new car, and I remember purposely buying it in August so I could drive around for the whole month with my windows open, because it just drives me absolutely crazy. I hate it. It was funny to see it on the favorite list.
And some people like that. Yeah. And here you're trying to drive around town with the windows down so you don't have to smell it. Yeah, it's very
I guess you can get a aerosol can, or Dick could, of new car smell.
Yeah, that's crazy.
On smell and toxicity, I got one thing to say about that. Normally, people, hydrogen sulfide, that smelly eggs, rotten egg smell, is generally a very repulsive kind of smell. And hydrogen sulfide is very toxic, and it's not generally a problem. It's like carbon monoxide or something, which is comparably toxic but doesn't have any smell. So it's a safety feature that the hydrogen sulfide has this smell, except if the concentration is very high, it deadens the taste buds or the smell buds in your nose, and you don't smell it anymore. So really high levels of hydrogen sulfide are also very toxic and very dangerous because you don't smell it anymore. And then it's still very toxic. So low levels never really poison anybody, even though it's more toxic than carbon monoxide, for example, but it's not nearly as dangerous at low levels. But at high levels, it becomes dangerous again because it quickly deadens your sense of smell, and you smell a little bit and all of a sudden, you don't smell it anymore. So you don't realize it's there. And that in industrial settings, that can be a real problem. If the concentration is so high you can't smell it, then it's really dangerous.
Yeah, that's scary when it deadens your sense of smell and you can't smell it anymore. Yeah, that's scary. That's so interesting.
I had a question about the taste buds and smell, and I think I remember it was a jelly bean experiment, and they were giving people jelly beans to taste, and they gave all different flavors and colors, and but in one experiment they closed their clipped their nose together so they couldn't smell, and I think they were explaining like when you're chewing stuff, the smells actually come out of your mouth as you start getting into that and mixing it with your saliva, and some of it aerosolizes. So they couldn't tell what flavor jelly beans they were eating, but I think they could still tell that they were eating something sweet, and I'm not sure. So I'm just wondering about like the interaction between, is there actually a smell of salty or sweet or sour, or is that totally taste buds, or is the line between those, is there some fuzziness and some overlap?
I think there's some fuzziness and overlap. I don't have the perfect scientific answer for you, but I know, like I said, from the research, we know that 2/3 of our smell comes from the ability to being able to taste, when we're tasting a food, we then can smell it better, and that overall works together. It's interesting when you say that, because on all the, when you go to the doctor and you do the scratch and sniff tests, that's why they have the multiple choice, because so many people can just say it smells sweet, but they might not be able to say what it is specifically. So I don't have an answer for that, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
And also it's weird, people like say if they lose their sense of smell, they don't like eating anything, but if they could still taste the sweet, maybe they'd still like something sweet, even if they couldn't smell exactly what it is. But
Right.
it does seem like the smell is so powerful that they just don't feel like eating at all.
Mm-hmm.
Something I have trouble imagining because I eat all day, but it's just
Mhm.
a personal thing.
Right. But
You could repeat that high school science experiment that I went to with jelly beans. So if somebody wanted to go to the trouble of making like green jelly beans that were lemon flavored, or yellow jelly beans that were cherry flavored or something, and then if people could distinguish, if they ate a jelly bean, they could see it. If they would get mixed up as to what it tastes like by going, if the color didn't match the taste that they were expecting.
Yeah, I think there was an experiment where they had people taste things and it was in a dark room. And they could taste things, but then when they turned the lights on, the milk was blue and then it didn't look the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you start to mess with the other senses, if you're just not able to smell it when you're eating it, and it doesn't look like it should, or you can't see it, it definitely has an effect on the flavors you're getting. So,
but different cultures have different things. Like I think it's the Inuits who like the taste or the odor of fish that's been buried for a period of time, so it, I don't know, I'd say spoils, ferments, whatever. Gets stinky, but that's a delicacy.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That sounds blech to me.
Yeah, there might be some acquired smells too, as just as acquired taste,
Mm-hmm.
get used to.
Certainly. Yeah.
So I'm curious, we have a bunch of people who are in those older age categories. Have you guys noticed changes in your smell or taste?
Oh, definitely, I do it. When I was in college, I took an organic chemistry course, and I got really good at detecting all kinds of different chemicals. We had reagents of all sorts, and I could identify them all by their smell. I could just whiff over a bottle of anything, and I could identify it. And now I can't even come close to that.
Do you notice if it's changed your enjoyment of food?
I don't know. It's hard to tell because I don't remember how I enjoyed it when I was in high school or when I was in college. I think I used to enjoy a lot of things when I was in college that I don't enjoy as much now. But I think it's because I'm older.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think necessarily getting older affects your weight, though. So you must be eating same or more calories, and it certainly may be less activity.
Yeah, I was curious. I think I noticed changes with my mom. She does not like the food as much. And I think part of it might be because it comes, she's at a facility where they bring up the food to your door. So it comes in a styrofoam container, and I think it's lost, some of it's not as hot and it's not cooking. And I think she misses like the cooking, because when I'll come over there, she really likes it if I cook something, or if she comes over here and we cook something, or if it's something that's more familiar to her.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, the familiarity, and plus just smelling everything in anticipation while you're cooking, gets your appetite ready, saliva, everything. And that versus when you have a styrofoam container of food just showing up and it's not hot. And yeah, there's a lot of things that can factor into that. That's great that you cook for her.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I will go ahead and pop off if no one has any further questions. So
Haggis
to meet
taste
all of you.
Good
Thank
to
you.
see
Haggis.
Yeah.
What does haggis taste like?
I have never tasted that personally. Has anyone else on the call?
I've heard it, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think I had it once and couldn't taste anything.
I think
Laura,
red's like
what is
kishka.
it?
Haggis is Scottish.
Yeah.
We were going to Scotland before COVID hit, so we were going to try it when we eventually get there. But I think it's some innards and things ground up, but it's and I think there's several different types, but I don't think it looks very appetizing.
No.
But anyway, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Very good. All right. Thank you
Thanks,
so much
everybody.
for having me.
Enjoy your lunch.
Bye.
everyone.
Very,
This
very
was,
good.
this
Thank
was-
you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Enjoy your lunch, everyone.
Yeah.
You too.
Oh.
Give it a smell.